Have you ever had someone pull away just when things were getting real? Like you're holding on, and they're disappearing. But here's the twist: they come back. Not once, not twice, but in patterns so predictable you could set your clock to it. And if you don't understand these patterns, you'll get trapped in their loop instead of breaking into your power. Today, I'm pulling back the curtain on something most people never figure out: the 7 predictable stages before an avoidant X returns. But before we break down all 7, I want you to first lock into 4 unshakable truths that will change the way you see them and, more importantly, yourself. They may come back on a familiar path, but you're walking a higher road now. Remember, love doesn't chase, it attracts. And healing isn't about fixing the past, it's about leading your future. So when they return, you don't just get a second chance, you get to decide if they even deserve one. Avoidants don't pull away because you did something wrong. They don't create distance because you aren't lovable or because you said the wrong thing. They create space because that's what they've been wired to do when emotional closeness starts to feel overwhelming. To them, intimacy isn't safety, it's pressure. And when they feel emotionally cornered, they escape. But if you don't understand this pattern, you'll blame yourself. You'll think, maybe I came on too strong, or maybe if I just gave more, loved harder, texted less, said less, waited more. You will try to contort yourself into someone less intense, less emotional, less expressive, just to keep their walls from going up. And in doing so, you abandon the most important person in the equation, yourself. That's the trap. See, the avoidant isn't rejecting you, they're rejecting the vulnerability that you represent. You got too close, and it triggered their survival system. Not because you're unsafe, but because they've learned somewhere in their past that closeness equals danger. Maybe it was a distant parent. Maybe it was inconsistency in early relationships. But either way, their nervous system says retreat to feel safe. And here's where it gets powerful. The moment you stop interpreting their silence as a judgment of your worth, everything changes. When you begin to say, this isn't about me, this is about their capacity, you stop chasing and start reclaiming your power. You begin to show up in the relationship as a full, grounded version of yourself, not someone shrinking to earn love. What avoidants never expect is this: your evolution in their absence. They pull away, expecting you to wait, to reach out, to prove yourself, to beg for closure. But when you do none of that, when you go inward and begin to rebuild your emotional muscle, when you begin to develop the kind of confidence that comes from self-connection, they start to feel it. They start to notice the shift, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because your energy no longer says, please choose me. It says, I've already chosen myself, and that self-assured silence is more disruptive to their avoidant pattern than any text you could have warned. Because in their world, love leaves them feeling trapped, but now you've become free. And that freedom becomes the very thing they can't ignore. The silence after an avoidant pulls away can feel like the most deafening sound you've ever heard. It feels final, cold, like a door has been slammed shut and locked from the inside. You check your phone, you replay conversations, you scan for clues. You wonder if maybe they just needed space, or maybe they're over you completely. But here's what most people never realize: that silence isn't the end of the story, it's just a chapter, a pause, a reset. And more importantly, it's part of a deeply ingrained emotional rhythm avoidants operate by. They pull away not because they've truly detached from you, but because they're trying to detach from the intensity of what they feel. And ironically, it's often when they're starting to feel the most connected that they retreat the hardest. But here's the truth: in their silence, they are still thinking. In fact, it's often in this space that the avoidant starts to feel your absence the most. They don't process in real time. They process in isolation. What felt like too much when they were close begins to feel like a void when they're away. That's the paradox of avoidant behavior. They crave connection, but fear the vulnerability that comes with it. And so they run, but they never truly disconnect emotionally, not completely. What happens during this silence is critical. Because while they're pulling back, you have a choice. You can spiral into self-blame, beg for crumbs of communication, and try to reestablish contact to soothe your own anxiety. Or you can sit in the discomfort. You can breathe into the stillness. You can use that silence as a mirror, not a punishment. Because how you respond during this phase tells them, and more importantly, tells you where your power lies. If you can hold the silence without collapsing, if you can resist the urge to something shifts, not just in them, but in you. You stop giving them emotional power over your peace. You stop letting their inconsistency define your value. And here's the paradox: when you no longer need their return to feel whole, you become far more likely to receive it. Because energy doesn't lie. When you're grounded, when you're calm, when you're not reaching out to fix something you didn't break, they feel that. Even in the quiet, especially in the quiet. And that's when the return begins, long before they send that first message. When an avoidant X begins to return, it rarely looks like the grand, dramatic moment you imagined during the silence. There's no heartfelt apology or emotional confession, at least not at first. Instead, it starts small, subtle, almost unnoticeable. It's a casual text at a strange hour: "Hey, just saw your favorite coffee place on my way to work." Or maybe, "I heard that song you used to play all the time." At first glance, it seems harmless, even sweet. But make no mistake, this is not just nostalgia. This is a breadcrumb, a calculated test. It's their way of knocking gently on the door without fully walking through it. Avoidants fear vulnerability, so they won't dive headfirst into connection. They'll tiptoe around it. They'll send these low-risk messages to gauge your response. What they're really asking is it safe for me to come closer again? But what they also want to know is, are you still there? Are you still available to me? That breadcrumb is about control. It's about reassurance. They want to know that the door hasn't closed, even if they're not ready to step fully inside. Now, this is where most people get caught. You've waited. You've missed them. You've been craving contact. So when that little message arrives, your nervous system lights up. It feels like hope. You respond quickly, warmly, maybe even excitedly. And just like that, you've entered their game again, where they set the pace and you adjust to match. But here's the thing: if you react out of emotion, out of relief, you reinforce the dynamic where they leave and return on their terms. The real power move is restraint. It's not about being cold. It's about being conscious. Respond, sure, but do it from a place of grounded self-worth, not emotional starvation. Show them through your energy that you are no longer the same person. Who would accept breadcrumbs and call it a meal? You've grown. You're no longer waiting, you're observing. Evaluating. Because when they drop that breadcrumb, it's not just a test of your openness, it's a test of your evolution. They want to see if you're still emotionally available without having to commit. But when you show up from a place of strength and neutrality, it disrupts the cycle. It forces them to make a real decision: step up or step out. And that is the moment when the dynamic begins to shift in your favor, not through what you say, but through the energy you hold. When the avoidant finally returns, it's rarely as clear-cut as you expect. It might look like consistency for a few days or a sudden interest in how you've been. They might talk about the past like it's some shared dream they want to revisit. And for a moment, your heart might whisper, maybe this time will be different. That's natural. The connection felt real. The absence was painful. And now the return feels like relief, like finally catching your breath after holding it for far too long. But here's the defining moment. This isn't about whether they come back. This is about who you become since they left. Because if you're still in the same emotional space, hoping, waiting, overgiving, afraid to set boundaries, then nothing changes. The cycle resets. But if you've done the inner work, if you've reconnected with your worth and realigned with your standards, then their return doesn't control you anymore. It doesn't sweep you off your feet, it makes you pause. Reflect. Decide. The truth is, their return isn't a win. It's not the prize, it's an opportunity for clarity, for evaluation, for truth. Are they returning with real intention, or just seeking comfort in your energy again? Are they here to grow with you, or to repeat a loop? Because it feels familiar and safe? You need to be brutally honest with yourself, because this is where most people fall back into the trap, mistaking presence for progress, contact for commitment. Now, they might come with sweet words. They might say all the right things, but words are cheap patterns tell the truth. So instead of clinging to what they say, watch what they do. Are they showing up consistently? Are they open to hard conversations? Are they emotionally available or just temporarily attentive? Here's where your power lies. This time it's on your terms. You're not here to audition for their love. You're not seeking validation. You're observing. You're grounded in your values. You're clear on your boundaries. And if they can't meet you at the level you've risen to, then their return is irrelevant. You're not the same person who used to beg for scraps of connection. You've evolved. You've expanded. And now love must come with presence, not excuses. With growth, not comfort. Because you're not choosing based on fear of loss anymore. You're choosing based on alignment with your highest self. So here's what you need to understand. The journey of the journey, it's about the emotional patterns that shape how they love, and how you respond to those patterns determines whether you break free or stay stuck. Each stage they go through, pulling away, going silent, testing the waters, slowly circling back, isn't random. It's predictable. But what's even more powerful than knowing their behavior is knowing your worth in the middle of it. Because the real transformation doesn't happen when they return. It happens when you stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that can't handle your depth. It happens when you stop reacting to their fear and start responding to your own healing. You see, most people get lost in the waiting for the text, waiting for the apology, waiting for the moment they come back and finally realize your value. But that's not strength. That's survival. And you weren't born just to survive, you were born to lead. To love from a place of abundance, not anxiety. To hold your boundaries like sacred ground. To show up for yourself in the ways they never did. Because when you begin to operate from that place where your peace isn't dependent on their presence, you become unshakable. You stop orbiting around them and start becoming the center of your own emotional universe. Yes, they may return. And when they do, you'll be tempted to step back into that old dance. The rhythm is familiar. The longing still lingers. But if you've done the work, something inside you will hesitate, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. You'll realize that love is no longer about proving you're enough. It's about choosing someone who already sees that you are. So when they come back, the question is not, will they stay this time? The question is, do they even deserve a place in this new version of me? And that question is what sets you free. Because the real victory isn't in getting them back. It's in not needing them back to feel whole. It's in rising so high that their return no longer defines your value, it simply reveals it. So let them return if they do, but let them return to someone stronger, clearer, more grounded, someone who isn't afraid to walk away from anything that no longer aligns with their truth. Because at the end of the day, your healing isn't about what they do. It's about who you decide to become, no matter what they choose. And that decision, that's where your power lies. Thank you so much for being here and listening with an open heart. If this message spoke to you, if it gave you clarity, strength, or even just a moment of peace, know that wasn't an accident. You're on a path of growth, healing, and power, and every step you take inward brings you closer to the love and life you truly deserve. If you found value in this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content that speaks directly to your transformation. Your journey matters, your healing is powerful, and your presence here is no small thing. I see you, and I appreciate you deeply. Until next time, take care of your heart, protect your peace, and never settle for anything less than alignment with your highest self. Goodbye for now, and remember, your story is far from over. The best chapters are still being written.